Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's virtual panel discussion on strengthening cybersecurity in an evolving digital landscape, best practices, threats, and the human element. I'm Sukriti, your moderator for the session. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, in today's interconnected world, cybersecurity is more critical than ever. And as the digital landscape continues to evolve, so do the threats and the challenges we face every day. Our goal today is to explore some of the key issues impacting cybersecurity, from emerging threats and compliance regulations to the human role in both defending against and being vulnerable to attacks. We have a fantastic panel of experts joining us today, and we'll be covering a range of topics, including the current cyber threat landscape, the human factor in cybersecurity, best practices in cyber hygiene, regulations and compliance, emerging technologies, and the future of cybersecurity, and incident response and crisis management. Now, before we begin, a quick housekeeping note here. We'll have time for a quick Q&A at the end, so please feel free to submit your questions via the chat feature throughout the discussion. Now, it's time to meet our panelists. I'm delighted to have Major Vineet Kumar, Global President and Founder, Cyberpeace; Prasad Manava, who is the MD India and VP of Engineering at Akamai Technologies; Ram Vaidyanathan, IT Security Evangelist, Manage Engine; Steve Ledzia, CTO, Google Cloud Security and Mediant JPAC; and Bhavesh Goswami, founder and CEO, CloudThat. Okay, now let's start by having each of our panelists introduce themselves. Can we please have a quick trivia about yourself and your focus in cybersecurity? Vineet, let's begin with you.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. This is Major Vineet. I'm from Cyberpeace. And something that people know less about me is I also serve with the Territorial Army. I'm a major with the Territorial Army. And apart from my cyber role, I have an infantry role to play. So whenever Army needs me, I'm there. Thank you.
Thanks, Vineet. Prasad.
Hey, great to be here. I work for Akamai Technologies, which is in the sphere of cybersecurity and cloud services. Quick trivia about myself. Recently, I've been a history buff, reading a lot about ancient and medieval India. So that's about me. But about my job relevance to cybersecurity, apart from being a part of a technology team that's a practitioner of cybersecurity, I also sponsor regional and global innovation programs at Akamai, where we bring to life new innovations in cybersecurity from the entire crew in Akamai, all the global employees. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Prasad. Ram?
Hello, everyone. My name is Ram, and I work at Manage Engine, which is the IT management division of Zoho Corporation. I've been part of Manage Engine for the last 10 years now. And as part of my role, I keep researching about the different ways in which attackers can strike organizations and steal their sensitive data. A quick trivia about me is that, well, I'm an ethical hacker, but I also like to run marathons, not full marathons, half marathons. Thank you.
Thank you, Ram. Steve?
Yeah, hi everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. So I serve as the CTO for Google Cloud Security in Asia Pacific and Japan. I came in through the Mandiant acquisition. So if you don't know Mandiant, Mandiant is a cybersecurity firm that responds to cyber intrusions and has other cybersecurity consulting services. It's now part of Google Cloud. And I've been with them for about 12 years, so quite a long haul with Mandiant. About myself, I enjoy cooking, trekking, and traveling when I'm not busy working.
Thank you, Steve. Bhavesh?
Hi, everyone. I'm Bhavesh Goswami, founder and CEO of CloudThat. And CloudThat is a training and consulting organization. We are partners with Amazon, Microsoft, and Google, both in training and in consulting. We are the current Microsoft Partner of the Year for training services, AWS Partner of the Year for training services for APJ. And a little bit about me, I was a founding member of the AWS Cloud team way back in 2005. And Andy Jassy, who's the CEO of Amazon now, was my skip level manager. So I joke that I'm one of the few guys who's both old and cloud native at the same time, because I started my cloud journey in 2005. So as part of our cloud migrations and journey, we provide cybersecurity, security to all our customers as well in terms of both training and consulting. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Bhavesh. Now, gentlemen, thank you so much for all those lovely introductions and trivia. I would like to dive into our first segment for today's conversation, which is, of course, the current cyber threat landscape. Now, cyber attacks are becoming more frequent, sophisticated, and damaging, as we all know. And to kick things off, Vinith, I would like to know from you if you could give us an overview of the major threats organizations are facing today and what trends you're seeing in the industry.
Thank you. That's a great question, Sukriti. And this is some of the research that Cyber Peace Foundation has done. In fact, over the past, what we see, we have some interesting projects. There's a project called as Project eKavach. Through that, I have set up sensors across different places, and we kind of track different kind of attacks that happen. And what we have observed is increase in the number of ransomware attacks. We have saw an increase in the number of supply chain attacks as well. And we must have heard about the recent pager attack as well. That was an interesting attack on how the supply chain can also be corrupted. And the way now, in fact, countries are going, we are now talking about cyber warfare. And in fact, now we are graduating. And I'm not just talking, but we're graduating and going on to the next level of cyber warfare. So supply chain attacks are increasing. We are also watching, in fact, a lot of phishing and social engineering attacks. And now AI has made it very simple. Now, back then, around 10 years back, it was difficult to track a kind of a, it was easy to track any kind of a phishing message because it was easy to find out about grammatical errors. So we are able to track things and we could easily make out that it's a proper phishing message. But now we live in the area of we live in the era of chat GPT, where easily, in fact, such messages can be crafted by just entering a prompt. And it has become very difficult now to track these kind of phishing and social engineering messages. And the community at large is facing, not just industry, even the community is facing today. There has been an increase in the cloud security threats. In fact, there are organizations who have actually moved their infrastructure to the cloud, and we have Steve here. He can share more on it. But what we see from the community, because we work with MSMEs, we work with startups, we work with industry, we work with critical infrastructure, we see they're pretty concerned because there have been cases where their instances have been compromised, and they see it as a great challenge today. Uh, Advanced persistent threat is another major issue, APTs, and it's a prolonged targeted attacks, and it's often backed by the nation states. And the aim is to infiltrate systems, remain undetected for extended periods, and also to steal valuable data. Also, the Internet of Things, IoTs, where we are surrounded by IoTs everywhere, IoTs in the refrigerator, washing machine, smart TV, smart bulbs. Again, that's a major concern and challenge today because a lot of these IoTs have been compromised, the vulnerabilities have been compromised, and then it has been used for espionage, it has been used for data theft, and also attackers make it as a part of a bot network for launching a mega distributed denial of service attacks. Deepfakes and AI driven manipulations is also something that we have been watching over the past 2 years. We have seen an increase in the number of the deepfake and AI driven manipulations that happen, where AI generated contents are being misused to spread misinformation, fraud, or even to conduct impersonation kind of a crime. And lastly, there are many points, but I'll just like to mention the last point here is the emerging technologies. And AI, I mentioned about AI on how AI is being used for deepfake, but then quantum is coming up in a big way. And there's a future risk here because quantum would mean that even computing could render even the current encryption standard obsolete. So whatever we have today could go obsolete. So there's a strong need to work on post-quantum encryption because this is going to be a major risk and challenge. So some of the few things that I see that is a challenge, and what we hear from people, what we hear from the community, what we hear from the different partners that we work, these are some of the few pointers. Happy to come again to share more on it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for those insights, Vineet. Prasad, I would like to move to you, building on to what just Vineet has shared. What are some of the new tactics or techniques that cybercriminals are using, and how can businesses stay ahead of these evolving threats? Because Vineet just emphasized onto certain factors which are very basic and available in our homes and available easily in our offices as well. So, how would you like to explain this to us?
Yeah, I would say Major Vineet actually mentioned some of them, and I'll build on top of it. So, we have rise of technologies like AI, Gen AI, and 6G, right? Like if you look at it, one is giving a very powerful weapon in one hand, the other is giving you a network where anybody, anywhere can get onto the internet and do what they want to do. Now, cyber criminals, will be very hard to spot because of this. Where are they sitting and how are they generating stuff? And their weapon of choice is social engineering. I mean, that there are very many forms of it. And I'll give a personal example. In the last 6 months, twice we had a campaign of cyber criminals, reaching out to team members in my company with my picture, which may be coming from a public domain site like yours, right? And it is so well targeted and filtered down the messaging that people don't know, and they'll reach out and ask, and but some people may actually fall for it. They can give away credentials, they can be financial loss, right? There's a bunch of things. So definitely that the Gen AI gives a big advantage to the attacker and puts the defender on guard. Like it's harder for them to catch them. And from a Indian organization's perspective, I think they'll have to build their cyber resilience. That's the big call to action. And you have to get holistic visibility, I think, and also verifying all application access. There are architectures like zero trust access, segmentation, where you actually get complete view of what's going on, and you are only giving access to those whom you trust and verify. So that's the call to action in this scenario, and it's a very, very dynamic scenario, like Major Vineet mentioned.
Okay, thank you so much, Prasad, for that. I will now shift to the next segment since we've covered what does the landscape looks like currently. We'll be now talking about the human factor in cybersecurity, of course. And we often hear that humans are the weakest link in cybersecurity. You just gave a reference, a great reference, Prasad, that how we are emotionally cued into this, and then the entire loop is created for us. But they're also crucial part of solution, as we all accept, because it's the decision making in the end that we require. Ram, I would like to know from you that if you could just talk about how human behavior contributes to these, both these vulnerabilities as well as defenses, and what organizations can do to improve their security culture.
Yeah, thanks for that, Sukriti. And I was listening to Prasad right now. He made some really, really interesting points, especially about AI and how attackers are leveraging AI. So that raises a very important question to us as defenders. So how can we, as the good guys, use AI, for all the good reasons? So besides that, yes, about the vulnerabilities and the human element, absolutely. It is true that human behavior contributes to both vulnerabilities and defenses. I mean, we have all heard, like you said, that humans are the weakest link when it comes to security. Now, if that is true, it follows that the reverse should also be true. Humans can also contribute to great defenses if their organizations take the right steps. So the security function of all organizations should actually be asking themselves, how can we empower our users to become beacons of defense? This is all the more important now because identity-based attacks have overtaken malware-based attacks. So anyways, first about vulnerabilities, many users are plainly not aware. They do not really understand, nor do they know how their activities can lead to security threats. In a way, you can call this complacency. For example, they may use unapproved or unsanctioned applications just to get their work done. So they have all the right intentions. They want to get their work done, but still it's a vulnerability. Secondly, we all know that users like clicking on emails that they're simply not supposed to. So a phishing email could contain a malicious link or attachment. The user can click on it, and that can serve as an entry point for an attacker. The user could be redirected then to a spoofed or malicious website where, unknown to them, scripts start to get downloaded. And what happens is a drive-by download, and this can serve as an initial access for adversaries. Another big vulnerability is to do with patching, and that point was also made. And especially patching on time is very critical. So you can have situations where the patching is just postponed, and the fix is ready, but the patching is postponed, and that leads to a vulnerability. The other point is users engaging in risky behavior, such as sharing sensitive information that they are not supposed to. So what all of this means is that users should be trained and made aware about security challenges. If this is achieved, it's half the battle won. So the security team must conduct regular training. And this training, I would say, must be gamified where possible. In our company, in Manage Engine, this is something that we ourselves take to heart. We try to gamify all the training when it comes to cybersecurity. So instead of asking questions in just a quiz-like format, the training should include simulations of attacks. So put the user in the real thick of things and take them through a real life scenario. And another thing that could be explored, when it comes to training is this thing of micro training. So as and when a user does any action that is not really ideal, a feedback should go to the user right then and there, so that they get that feedback and they can immediately, there is feedback right there for them. That's the best way to learn, rather than conducting a training at the end of the year, for example, and then relying on the user to know about everything at all times. That doesn't really happen. So there are companies which have done this. So this it comes up as a pop-up. So as and when the user does any action that is not ideal, a pop-up comes up and keeps them aware. So this is what organizations, I think, should do to foster a culture of cybersecurity within their business.
Thanks for that, Ram. I think that those suggestions actually make a lot of sense to people who are actually responsible for both defense as well as building up against and looking at those vulnerabilities. Steve, I'd like to move to you. So, from your experience, tell us what areas of cyber defense are organizations performing, well in, and where do they struggle actually? What areas do actually need these modernization?
Yeah, I like that question because so many times we talk about all the challenges we have in cybersecurity, and here's an opportunity to talk about where our defenders are doing well. So let me give you some firsthand experience from Mandiant, right? So Mandiant, I said, responds to breaches, helps understand what happened when an attacker is successful and what to do about it. And one of the things we noticed across the incidents we respond to is that unlike in a physical world attack, where if you're attacked, you immediately know it, in a digital attack, the attacks often occur unnoticed. And an attacker can achieve an intrusion and remain hidden for a very long period of time. And so we track that with every client that we help, and we call it dwell time. From the time the attacker defeats prevention and successfully intrudes into the organization until the time they're actually discovered. And we've been tracking this number across the clients we've been helping for years. And I want to share with you what those numbers look like. Let me just pull up on the screen here, and hopefully everyone is able to see. This is the dwell time from 2011 to 2023. And 10 years or so ago, it was taking organizations more than a year to simply notice that their prevention had failed, let alone begin to try and respond to it and remediate it in some way. And you can see that numbers dropped. And last year in 2023, the global average dwell time across the clients we helped, they've brought that 400 plus number down to 10 days. So I think that's an incredible success. And you can ask, well, what's driving that success? It's a good quantitative success. What's driving it? And Prasad mentioned earlier resilience. And I think the notion of moving away from a pure prevention posture to a resilient posture is what's driving this. It's not enough to say we will prevent all attacks, because not all attacks are preventable. You have to have a resilience function to be able to say, when my prevention fails, I'll have a separate capability to notice that failure and to notice it quickly. And in the industry, we call that detection and response. And there's all sorts of flavors of detection and response. There's EDR, the endpoint detection and response, NDR, network detection and response, MDR, managed detection and response, and there's others as well. But this idea of assume breach, assume that my prevention will fail, which is a hard thing for an operational team to explain to management, but we'll assume that it'll fail. And this way, when it does fail, will catch it quickly and drive it. So I think this is a great success of detection and response over the last 10 years or so. But now where it's brought us is to a new challenge. And the new challenge is once you detect something, it's not that you can immediately go and remediate it. What you need to do first is you need to investigate. You need to understand, okay, I found the tip of the iceberg. What all else is happening in my environment related to this activity? I found one compromised account. Are there other compromised accounts? Is there other malware? Are there other backdoors the attackers left? And you need to scope the entire breach through investigation. And I think that investigation phase is where organizations are struggling today. They have a hard time in a digitally transformed organization receiving all the telemetry they need to receive and being able to search through all that telemetry quickly and get answers quickly to facilitate a prompt investigation. I think today is the change. And so I think you're seeing a lot of change in the security operations and the SIM space. There's been a lot of acquisitions and mergers in the space. There's been a shift from a lot of on-premise SIM solutions into cloud solutions. And I think that's reflective of trying to modernize this security operations space. And now that we've got the detection and response in place, to now move on and do a better job in the investigation phase as defenders.
Thanks for that, Steve. I think those pointers would be really helpful in understanding how the direction is set in order to make those changes put in properly. Now, I'd move to the next segment where we talk about the cyber hygiene. And cyber hygiene refers to the steps any individual organizations can take and maintain the security and protect their systems. And Ram also touched based a little. Bhavish, I would like to know from you that what role does training and awareness play in reducing the risk of human error, and how can we create more effective training programs?
Absolutely. So I feel that everybody understands prevention is better than cure, and the best way to prevent any of this attack affecting your organization is a really well-trained team who can, identify such attacks. Where we see most companies, so most of the large organizations do have some kind of training for cybersecurity, but it just ends there. It's a yearly training. People just have to watch some videos, do some very small assessment, and then tick, tick, tick. You are done for the year. And these programs usually are not even changing throughout the year, right? So over the last 2 to 3 years, the company might have developed something and they're using the same thing again and again. What the programs we found effective with large organizations and mediums as well is that once the program is done, we need to thoroughly train and test the team that they have understood what we want to explain. And here, a lot of companies have solutions. A lot of the cloud providers have solutions where you can simulate attack onto your own teams. So, for example, if you want to do a phishing attack, rather than our team falling prey to that, we can simulate the same kind of attack, the same kind of emails, right? The email addresses will be wrong and all the telltale signs that it's a phishing attack will be there. If anybody clicks on any of those links, a notification goes back to you and you can see that out of the 500,000, 2,000 employees that you simulated, how many actually fall prey to that. You can similarly try to do social engineering attacks where the face and the voice of the CEO could be, because if you are in any important position, you are a VP, you are a CTO, you are a CEO, you're chief of something, then you would have nowadays talked about something like we are all talking in this, and the video of this will be available, audio of this will be available on the internet. So it just takes for the attacker just a few minutes to take that and create a video or audio of you, use WhatsApp, right? Try to contact all the people through email or WhatsApp and asking them to kind of do something which they're not supposed to do, right? So you can simulate attack yourself onto your folks and see how many of them fall prey to that. So I think an effective solution will not only have up-to-date content and stuff, but you will have measures to measure the effectiveness of the content by, attacking our own teams, per se. And the folks that are doing well can be then given reward and recognition. So one thing that works really well is, for example, if a lot of companies have their own IT systems, employee systems, where you can see the employee profile. If you can give a badge of employee profile, if you don't fall for the prey for the, let's say, 5 to 6 quarters, if you successfully identify and report the attacks that you have simulated to your IT things, then you get the badge. And we have also seen a lot of corporations giving a physical badge that you can put on your ID card or your bag or something like that, so folks know, and a list of such security experts readily available. So if anybody has any questions or concerns, they can contact that person and kind of get more guidance on that, right? So I feel that a good training program for the employees would not only have good content, but would have assessment and checking that they've actually learned by simulating those attacks onto our own folks in both WhatsApp, email, whatever it is, and make sure that they're not falling prey to it. If they fall prey to it, retrain them that, hey, this could have been a real attack with real consequences if this came from an attacker. So I think that those will work out really well for an organization.
Wonderful. Thanks for that, Bhavesh. I think you've laid out some good pointers of caution that companies can look at. Vinit, I'd like to move to you and understand. So these were the kind of things which comes into sight. Now, what are the common mistakes or oversights you see organizations making when it comes to the cyber hygiene?
Well, I'll like to continue first from what Bhavesh has said, because I'm very much convinced, and this is what we see also what is working. Additionally, I'd like to add a couple of points to that, like what we have actually seen in the form of engagement with companies is when we organize a kind of a bug bounty or a cyber challenge. So what we do is with startups, with MSMEs, with low budget. I mean, most of them MSMEs, they don't have a special cybersecurity budget for them to get best of the tool or best of the resources in the IT and cybersecurity teams. So the solution that we generally give them is to organize a small bug bounty where we get some of the hackers, ethical hackers here, ethical hackers and cybersecurity experts to come together. They are given access for like 24 hours to find out the bugs that are there in their applications, in their networks, and on the basis of the bugs that they report, they are given awards. So some companies, in fact, they try to conduct internal exercises like that to identify bugs and also identify talent within their organization who can be groomed into cybersecurity and who can be taken forward. And additionally, there are certain companies who also encourage their employees to participate in cybersecurity competitions to enhance their skills and awareness within the organization. We recently conducted a hackathon. It was called the Terrier Cyber Quest, and it was great to see that multiple companies, in fact, you'd be happy to know, Steve, that even Google employees participated and many other companies came forward and they participated in an Indian Army hackathon and they showcased their skill. So that is one great way to engage employees. There's one great way to kind of implement awareness in the organization. And then now coming up to your question, Sukriti, is some basic problems that we see. And one of them that goes on the top is the passwords. I know people have been talking about passwords since ages, but the problem still remains. People are careless about passwords. Though now there are a lot of things. Now we're talking about passwordless authentication and a lot of new technologies which are going to be there. But as on date, and these companies and organizations of all sizes, this is a common problem that passwords are generally people use weak passwords and they don't use complex password and they don't follow the password policies that are there. The second challenge again that we see is the regular updation of their applications that they use, and these are endpoints sometimes. The computers that are given or the laptops that are given to the employees, and there are many employees who use their own devices, despite organizations having a proper BYOD policies. They find hard to implement the BYOD policies and the guidelines. So there are challenges with in relation to keeping all the softwares, applications up to date and patching the vulnerabilities. Then the third major challenge is the access control, where access control limiting user permissions based on the principle of least privilege. So that is not happening in a lot of organizations. Those who are very much paranoid about security, I would say, or if the organizations are very careful about security. They do implement, but still a large number of organizations still find it hard because they don't have access to the technical resources that could do it. And here I'm talking about the MSME segment, the small and medium enterprises. So they find it hard to implement this. Data backup is another challenge. Performing regular data backup and ensuring that the data is secured safely and in a secure space, and also testing backups don't happen. Like in incidents can happen at any point of time. Ransomware can hit anyone at any point of time. But what to do when that happens? So conduction of some kind of a mock drills within the organization should happen, which we encourage organizations to do. Maybe they can keep one day in a month to conduct a drill where they can test different kind of scenarios, like a ransomware affecting the network, then what steps that they need to do. So I think more of that should be encouraged within the organization. Then the use of encrypting data, conducting regular audits like the vulnerability assessment, pen testing exercises should be conducted. So these are some of the regular kind of issues that we notice. However, there are organizations now which are moving faster and they understand the importance of security now. Earlier, it used to be like, if you talk 10 years back, we had a tough time encouraging organization, okay, guys, you need to do this, you need to implement it, otherwise the data would be lost. There are a lot of previously related issues, the PII and all that stuff would come in, and people, your individuals and your clients could be compromised. But now I see a lot of awareness among the entities. In fact, there's a lot of push that has gone from the government also. Certain has been releasing regular guidelines. The NCIAPC, which is the National Critical Information Infrastructure Protection Center, they have been releasing guidelines for the critical sectors. We also have the DPDP Act now, and I'm sure with certain times we'll have guidelines also, because the act has just came in, and it came last year. Now we are expecting some guidelines to come. The DIA, the Digital India Act, is also something that is going to come forward. So a lot of things are happening, and I would like to mention that things are quite positive. Organizations are taking the positive steps, but a lot more needs to be done at this stage.
Thanks for that, Vineet. I think Prasad wants to add something to this, and it's a very interesting bit where we might just miss the smallest of details that comes to us in order to understand what's a threat. So, Prasad, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I think he mentioned majorly about small and medium businesses, but it's not limited to small and medium businesses. It's, organizations of all sizes. What we notice is they're on a spectrum of security journey. And, we, Akamai being a security company, we have been on this for, a decade to 2 decades. And so when we talk to other organizations, what we realize is the pandemic has pushed people into digitization at like a breakneck speed. So they've adopted a lot of stuff, right? Just like that, because you wanted to work from anywhere, any device. But you haven't really scanned your landscape to understand, hey, what is my landscape of applications? And, like Vineet mentioned, how am I giving restricted access? Only trust and verify and give access. That's like a basic hygiene, I would say, for a CISO's group or a cybersecurity group. The next thing becomes, your visibility of your crown jewels, as they say. Like, what is very important for me? Customer data, financial data. And then start, segmenting them away in case you have a ransomware attack. And it's given, right? All of us agree ransomware attack will happen. You basically limit the radius, to very small. It doesn't hit your crown jewels. All these are approaches that you can consider as a company. And what we have noticed is it happens at all sizes of organization. It's independent. So just wanted that.
Thank you, Prasad. I think it was a very important aspect to be considered while we are actually looking at the entire preview of what exists currently. I would like to move on to the other very important, angle here, which are, of course, the regulations and compliance, which is yet again an element that binds the entire cybersecurity together. With regulations like GDPR, CCPA, and some of the elements that Vineet mentioned, organizations are actually facing this growing pressure to stay compliant with the data protection laws. And considering the fact that there are humongous data available at this point in time in the market. Can you give us an overview of some of the key cybersecurity regulations and how organizations can actually ensure they stay compliant?
Yeah, I think the data regulations are plenty, and they're pretty common now around the world. I'm just going broad, not taking any particular example. With many countries leading and adopting regulations related to data, I think we have mentioned a couple of them earlier. So, what does this ask for? A lot of these say data needs to stay where it's supposed to stay and not cross borders, go elsewhere. So it's very important for companies to pick cloud providers who have presence where they need it. So, we give the example of Akamai. We are in about 4,000 points of presence in about 750 cities. So if you have to limit your data to one place and keep it there, you'd have to take help, because otherwise, you won't be compliant. You'll hit other things. And on top of it, you'd also want to restrict the access to the data, taking a very good security posture on top of it, because once you localize the data, you now don't want to give it to the bad actor. So that's my suggestion is look for the right kind of cloud providers, get help, because it only gets complicated going down. Like I said, there are plenty of these regulations. They're coming at a breakneck pace, and you really need to adopt it for your organization.
Thank you, Prasad. Ram, I would like to move to you. If you could just help us understand what can organizations do from an identity and access management and threat detection perspective to keep themselves secure?
Yeah. Now, identity hygiene is extremely critical. So it involves processes and technology to ensure that you keep your organization proactively secure. When it comes to identity and access management, we need to plug gaps right at the time of user provisioning, because user provisioning is step number one, right, in most organizations. Now, a lot of the organizations around the world use Active Directory as their directory service, just as an example. So when a user is onboarded and being provisioned in Active Directory, we should also look for ways to provision them automatically across multiple platforms, whether it's on premises or in the cloud. This would actually eliminate or at least reduce the human error factor when it comes to misconfigurations. Also, we have to look for ways to automatically assign permissions and revoke permissions when they are not required. So in any organization, it is a given that people are going to collaborate. They would need access to certain resources. But this is a time-bound thing. So perhaps you have the sales team and you have the marketing team, and they are working on a collaborated project, and it's going to be like a 2-week project. So for those 2 weeks, access needs to be provided to people, probably from the marketing team. But then after those 2 weeks are done, the permissions should be revoked, and there's got to be a way to do this automatically. This is extremely critical. So what I've talked about now is the provisioning part and the permissions part of it. Likewise, you have the whole process of deprovisioning a user. So this happens when the user's life cycle ends. And this process of deprovisioning must also be automated. And this leads to better identity hygiene. The next thing organizations should do is they have to trigger the right defense actions based on user events. So if any user account is involved in any activity that they are not supposed to, then for sure certain actions must be done. Perhaps the user must be logged off, or the entity that is associated with this particular event, that must be taken off the network. You can also assign a risk score to different users and entities. So these kind of actions must be done, and it should be done automatically, so that you're again keeping your organization proactively secure. The third thing that I would like to stress upon is the importance of MFA and SSO, and that was kind of alluded to before by the other panelists as well. And when I say MFA, it should be truly multi-factor authentication, because you want 3 factors of authentication ideally, if you can actually have it, and it's got to be ably supported by single sign-on. Because with single sign-on, what happens is that it helps to bring all the different identities that you have. Maybe it's the same user, they have different identities. They can all come under one single umbrella, and then you can have better visibility and security. For example, you can apply a lot of security analytics on what you see because of you've got single sign-on implemented. So this is from an IAM perspective. Now, when it comes to threat detection, again, visibility is extremely important here. Your security operations center should be able to connect to every part of the network and bring in the activity logs. Then your security analyst should be able to correlate what's happened in different parts of the network as a single incident in case it actually is a single incident. So you could have event A happening in one part of the network, event B happens in another part of the network, and event C happens in yet another part of the network. And in isolation, they all look benign enough. But then when they're put together, that's a whole different story, right? So the SIM solution or any security analytics solution that you use should be able to correlate what's happened. And they should be able to put A, B, and C together and see that it is actually one single incident. And that's a very, not a benign incident, actually. So that is something that the Security Operations Center should do. Now, I'm actually stepping into the realm of detection engineering here. So this can be rule-based, which is good to have. But I also feel that we should be able to leverage AI and ML here. So the system or your security analytics platform is able to actually build a baseline of expected activity for every user and entity in the network. And every time somebody does an action that they are not supposed to, or that doesn't fall within the expected baseline, then that gets tagged as an anomaly and an alert can be raised. And on top of raising an alert, it can also increase the risk score of that particular user or entity. So that you as an organization, if you have a particular risk appetite, or you said that this is the level of risk that I can take, and it goes beyond that, then you can actually come in and take some action based on it. So that is the detection part. You should also have the wherewithal to actually go back in time. So you have all of these activity logs. You should be able to find out the root cause as well. So you have to be able to dig deep into all the activity logs, and investigate and figure out like what really led to this in the first place. So that is also extremely important. And the other thing is the whole part of response. So again, automatic response. You don't want to be ideally waiting until you get an alert and then take action. You want to at least take the first level of response as soon as you figure out that something wrong is happening. Again, like I said, the simple examples are, taking the machine off the network or logging off a user. These can actually be automated if you have the right security analytics solution or SIM solution in place.
Thank you so much, Ram, for those wonderful insights. Actually, you've very well built up our next segment of what we're going to actually cover when it comes to the technology. Those are emerging in the landscape of cybersecurity, and technologies like AI, ML, blockchain. They've started to play a very, very big role in the entire cybersecurity defense, and in some cases, the threats themselves. Now, Steve, how do you see these emerging technologies impacting the future of cybersecurity, both in terms of enhancing security and introducing new risks?
Yeah, cyber defense has always been an arms race between the offense and the defense. And I think probably more than any other emerging technology, we'll see that artificial intelligence is going to change the game and equip both sides, both the offense and defense. And I think, excuse me, I think we've heard a little bit about that in the discussion already. Major Vinny talked about, the grammatical errors and the spelling errors. Well, AI will generate beautifully articulate language that'll be very hard to recognize as a phishing message. And Ram already talked about some of the applications of AI in the Security Operations Center for detection. But there's many other use cases on both the offense and defense as well. We're seeing AI being used in cybercrime scams, so business email compromise scams, which try and trick people into redirecting payments into attacker-controlled accounts. And we see deepfakes being used to make those BEC scams more credible and more effective. Those are usually against corporations, against individuals and consumers. There's the romance scams and pig butchering scams, and we're seeing real-time deepfakes being used in those sorts of scams as well. And so the offense, without a doubt, is arming up and gearing up and seeing how they can use AI to be more effective. At the same time, the defense is doing a lot of that as well. One of the big challenges we have in cybersecurity is the talent gap. It's very hard to find skilled cybersecurity analysts. And so the analysts that are there, we have to find ways to make them as effective and productive as possible. And I think that's what AI does. It's not that today AI is replacing the analysts, it's making those analysts more productive. It's doing the first 60, 70, 80% of their task for them so that they can focus on the remaining portion and get that done a lot more quickly and complete a much larger workload because they're being augmented by AI capabilities. That can be things like natural language searches instead of syntactically correct query language search that's being generated by Gen AI. It could be on the security orchestration, automation and response side, automatically creating playbooks out of natural language. It could be conversational AI with intelligence, cyber threat intelligence-based systems. There's many, many applications, particularly around generative AI and around the use case of summarization and Q&A that I think are helping defenders in a number of ways as well. So yeah, the short answer, AI is changing the game both on the offense and the defense.
Thanks, Steve. And I think that just calls out for all professionals to just be more vigilant towards these things and understand things from the basics and then act upon it, being, in the awareness state of mind. Prasad, you have something to add to this?
Yeah, I think Steve makes some great points. And I just wanted to add that because I heard a lot of your audience are actually budding cybersecurity professionals. So I think hybrid skills are the thing for the future. So you need to have your traditional cybersecurity expertise and knowledge for sure, but make it hybrid with AI expertise, understand programming, data analysis, machine learning, and AI ethics. I think that's going to be big. We have AI everywhere. And if cybersecurity professionals can get a hold of these, I think they would be placing themselves in a great place for the future. So great points made by Steve.
Thanks, Prasad. I think I second your thoughts onto this because the way AI is being used in the market at this point in time, it definitely requires a lot of regulation, right? In all possible ways, across industries. Let's just not talk about tech, but across industries, the way it's being used, right? And I think technology is actually introduced, discovered, and innovated for good purposes, but it just happens vis-a-vis. So, Ram, you have something to add to. Please go ahead.
You're on mute, Ram.
Ram, we can't hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, this is about Gen AI in specific, actually. We are talking about the use cases of AI. Now, one of the things that security analysts actually struggle with is this act of writing reports at the end of every incident, right? So Gen AI can actually be used over there, and it just then becomes a case where the security analyst can review what has been generated and then make the necessary edits and then submit it to management. I thought this was a very, very amazing use case when it comes to Gen AI and security incidents, reporting of security incidents.
Thanks, Ram. Vineet, yes, please go ahead.
Yes, in fact, we have the centers of excellence, and a great use case of GenAI we had seen is a lot of students were part of the centers of excellence. They have been able to utilize GenAI to create their own codes, their own scanners, and everything through GenAI because it gives you the access, it gives you the code. For them, it's easier to go through the code, compile the code, test the code, and so that is one thing that we have seen. So somebody who's a kind of looking forward for to a career in cybersecurity, for them also Gen AI is a very great tool because it tells you how to go about it. It tells you the different processes. It tells you about the different tools that you can develop out of Gen AI. So that's the positive side of Gen AI, what we have seen, and we see a lot of talents emerging out of Chat GPT, I would say, and other Gen AI tools, which actually help and in giving the guidance to these individuals who are looking for a career, who want to become security experts in the times to come. So that's a great use case that I'd like to share with everyone here.
Thanks, Vineet. And having the understanding of using it in the right manner and the basics is of utmost importance for anybody other in that industry using Gen AI or any technology for that matter. Bhavish, I would like to move to you. We've spoken about use cases. We've spoken about how this entire arena is functioning at this point in time. What should organizations should do now to prepare for the future as these technologies become more widespread?
Absolutely. So I think a lot of the things already been mentioned here by folks, but just to reiterate those, that first and foremost is have a zero trust architecture in your organization where you, and again, reinforce that through training and development, that you just have minimum amount of privileges required by anybody, by any systems, by any person, and the multi-factor authentication, right? And that's even more important now because there's so many Gen AI solutions, like Microsoft has Copilot, or Amazon has Q, Google has their own set of solutions that if you earlier, if I wanted to search through, like if I had 5,000 employees and I want to search something, it would be manual process. But now using those Gen AI systems, I can just say, hey, what is the, how do I find so and so? And, because the Gen AI solutions have access to all the data in the organization, it can very easily answer this both for you as well as for the attacker, right? So make sure that you really adopt the zero trust architecture onto this, especially if you're using the solutions. Training and development plays a huge role, making sure your teams are understands what's happening, like we discussed before. Another thing is to make sure that you have a solid, I think Steve talked about a little bit, and so did Prasad, that manpower is very important. The cybersecurity skills in the market are really few and far in between. There's a huge need for huge amount of cybersecurity experts, but also the amount of technologies that they need to learn increases all the time. Because earlier, for example, they would need, if they're using a SIM tool, like Steve was mentioning, right, they would probably just know the SIM tool and just know them really well. But nowadays, a lot of organizations use the cloud native SIM tools provided by cloud providers like GCP or AWS or Microsoft. And when you do that, you not only need to be an expert at the SIM tool and the technology, you need to understand how that interacts with the entire cloud infrastructure as well, because there's like virtual private networks and storages and access control on cloud and things like that. So the surface area becomes a lot more, and add to the AI Gen AI on top of that, and then you see there's has to be a constant skilling program inside the organization to make sure that folks are being skilled on cloud, on AI, and things like that on top of that. Also, I would say that every organization should have an entity, a vendor entity, something like that, which is separate from the implementer, who can audit their infrastructure once every so often, right? If you are really serious, once every quarter, maybe not then once every year, but have somebody who's not part of the implementation audit your infrastructure, try to get into it and see what report they are giving about your security best practices, your employees, and your kind of how they're trained and so forth. Make sure that you have kind of holistic approach to all of this. There's so many things in cybersecurity, from data privacy to different cloud providers, ecosystems, things like that. So make sure that somebody's looking at that. You have a good CISO who's looking at all of this and dotting all the I's, crossing all the T's, and making sure that your guys are trained, you have proper systems, processes in place to protect yourself. Because like Steve was mentioning, that the attackers are also getting smarter, right? Major Vinith was also mentioning that they also learn from that, and now there's no more grammatical errors, nothing. you will get an email that looks very, very genuine for that. So yeah, take a holistic approach to security.
Thanks, Bhavesh. You've already built up on to the next segment that I had for incident response and crisis management. You've given us some wonderful insights of how this can be well managed. Vineet, if I may ask you, can you just give us, a walk of the key components of an effective incident response plan? What does it look like? And maybe not the pointers because Bhavesh has already covered most of them. But what are the elements that are a part of an effective incident response plan?
Sure. I'm also mindful of the time, so I'll be very quick and precise. So, ideally, there are 8 steps. So, one is the preparation stage where you establish an incident response team, you define procedures, and you also conduct regular training and exercises to ensure their readiness. The step two of this one is identification, where you detect and confirm incidents quickly and classify the severity. Step three is the containment, where you isolate the affected systems to prevent the spread of the incidents. So that's very important that you contain so that the incident, the kind of malware, if there's a malware, it doesn't spread to your entire network and disrupt your operation. Step four is the eradication, where you identify and remove the root cause and also any kind of associated threats that the incident has. Then moving on to step five, where you restore systems to normal operations and also verify their security. Step six, which is the communication. Here, the communication is not just internal, but also external communication throughout the incidents. Like, for example, there are certain guidelines where you need to report within 6 hours of identifying a particular incident. And these incidents, something like if you have incidents like data breaches, malware, ransomware attacks, DDoS, website defacement, systems compromise, or any kind of identity theft, spoofing, phishing incidents, you need to report to certain within 6 hours of identification of that. So that's very critical and important. And finally, the post-incident analysis, where you need to review the response process that was given, the identification, the lessons basically learned during the process while you were doing the incident response, and improve any kind of future preparedness. So all of that should be built in a form of standard operating procedures and developed within organizations. So yeah, over to you, Supriti.
Thank you so much, Vineet. Now, here's the last for this conversation. Ram, talking about the C-suite here. How can CIOs, CTOs go about making the right investments in cybersecurity defense? And how do they communicate the value they bring to the board?
Well, yeah, this is the million-dollar question. CISOs play a major role in communicating the effectiveness of the security function to the board. Now, there was a time when CISOs were not part of quarterly meetings. Thankfully, that has changed now. They are very much a part of quarterly meetings now. Everybody has realized the importance of the security function. Now, before making an informed decision about the right investments in security defense, CISOs and their teams must start with a comprehensive risk assessment. They should develop something called the risk register, which in a way is an inventory of the risks the organization faces. Then they should be able to assign a probability for the risk to manifest itself in a given time period, say for the next 12 months. Now, there are two ways to do this. They can do it qualitatively, where they would assign a measure of high, medium, or low for all the risks. But it is always better to quantify this. You know, if your organization is able to actually quantify the risk, and there are definitely certain tools available to help you do that, it's always better to put a number value to that actually. So after assigning the probability for the risk, they can then go ahead and estimate the cost that the organization will incur in case the risk does manifest itself. So with these two measures, the risk and the cost, the security team will have a grasp on the financial implication and the negative business impact of a given particular risk. They can then go ahead and prioritize all of these risks. And once this is done, they can look for the right investments in cybersecurity defense. So they have to ask themselves the question, what solution can I deploy to take care of this risk, which is a priority for me? How much would this solution cost? And deploying this, to what extent can we bring down the probability of the risk? What would the ROI be? Because at the end of the day, it is all about ROI. And the CISO and their team should be able to show positive ROI to the board. The board at the end of the day only understands two languages, the language of money and the language of risk. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Ram. And in the interest of time, I think it's time for us to close the session. So thank you to all of you, gentlemen. and you've brought so many insightful and engaging discussions and pointers to the table today. We've covered a lot of grounds, from understanding the current cyber threat landscape to preparing for the future with the emerging technologies, from defenses to being vulnerable. To our audience, thank you so much for joining us. We hope we are leaving you with actionable insights that will help you strengthen your organization's cybersecurity posture, as well as, from the individual point of view, to your devices, to your mobile phones, to everything. Have a great day and stay secure. Gentlemen, thank you so much once again for being a part of this conversation. It was a delight to have each one of you here with me today.
Good
Thank
to be
you.
here. Thanks as well.
Thank you
Having
so
us.
much. Thank you.
Thanks.